It's news updates, and I am Grace Komalafe. In a bid to commercialize weather data, enhance the accuracy of weather and climate forecasts, and integrate artificial intelligence (AI) into weather and climate intelligence, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency (NIMET) has signed a memorandum of understanding with Tomorrow.io, a weather intelligence company based in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. The Director General and Chief Executive of the agency, Professor Charles Anosike, who revealed this, expressed optimism about the partnership's potential to achieve the agency's mandate, focusing on revenue generation and improved safety in the aviation sector. According to the Director of African Expansion at the Tomorrow.io, Yaniv Gelnik, the practical benefits of downscaling weather and climate information daily for end users, particularly farmers, using AI for precise, efficient, and faster forecasts can be a veritable source of income. Stay tuned for more on Souk News.
Hello and welcome to Market Insight. Yes, this is the show that gives you all the information you need about the commodity market as well as the currency market. I'm your host Adesua Eromosele, and today we will be looking at something very crucial, because recently we've had some challenges in the global economic space, and today we'll be discussing the disruptions in the food supply chain due to the Red Sea unrest as we currently have it. Now, the Red Sea, once a bustling trade route, has become a point of tension due to several factors. The Yemeni rebel group, Houthis, has launched drone and missile attacks on ships in the Red Sea since December 2023. They claim this is in response to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and to pressure Israel. These attacks, have brought about so many challenges, and one is the fact that several major shipping companies temporarily halted operations, and this has caused delays. And also, the ongoing threat of attack raised insurance costs and discourages some companies from using the route. Now, the attacks risks escalating between Houthi, Saudi Arabia, and other regions. And beyond the Houthi action, the Red Sea is witnessing a broader struggle for control and resources. Regional powers like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar are vying for influence in the Horn of Africa and the Middle East, and this is increasing instability. Unresolved conflicts between Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia over the Nile River's usage adds another layer of tension. So we can see that this current situation is bringing about global trade disruptions, energy shock waves, regional escalation, and so many other major challenges. Now, to discuss this topic, we would be introducing our guest. Our guest today is Gospel Obele. He is an economist, and he'll be joining us virtually to talk in-depthly about this current challenge we have in the global space. Good morning to you, Gospel.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So now let's, go right into it. What is your take on the current happenings in the global space, talking about the Red Sea unrest?
Well, we've seen that these narratives have been consistent. They're just evolving in different nuances, different ways. So you look at the Russian-Ukraine war, the Israel-Hamas war, the rise of geopolitical tensions. Those tensions have always existed. But we're now seeing that the rise of these tensions are now moving beyond just, in quote-unquote, wars or disputes or disagreements to severe trade tensions that are bordering heavily on supply chain. So you've seen how the Russian-Ukraine war has also evolved into impacting the supply of wheat, grain, and all of these flour and baking materials that are needed globally. So it's like the same situation we find with the Red Sea, and it's just speaks to that traction of global unrest that are evolving. So you're seeing more evolution from geopolitical tensions that are impacting directly on the on core consumption dynamics that are needed, or core raw materials in the global market. So what's going to happen is, if this continues and there is no sort of like an amicable way to um, solve the problem, the unrest that we have, that may impact heavily on global commodity prices, especially when it comes to food commodity, and invariably as well impact on imported inflation for many countries, which again, in context to the cost of living, food and energy has been the core areas of impact or severe pain, for majority of people globally right now. So it has a lot of ripple effect if the unrest is not put to, if the unrest doesn't stop, or if some form of agreements are not being reached quick enough to ensure that supply chains will suffer for it.
Now, Gospel, what specific commodities would you say would be greatly affected by this unrest?
Yeah, basically food commodities, and more importantly, raw material based food commodities that would go into raw materials that go in as inputs, for semi-produced or finished goods. So if you think about it from that aspect, it can be a very, very broad basket of raw material food commodities. And this can also be nuanced in many ways. Knowing fully well that one of the things globalization did for us was to help nations evolve in their area of strength. So you have Apple having their HQ in the US, California, in Silicon Valley. You also have a situation where the manufacturing HQ for the same Apple is in China. All right. So you have also, car manufacturers having their HQ in Japan, but the assembling plant is in Vietnam and all that. So the globalization dynamics has evolved such a way that you have specialized industries and factories for global commodities spread across different countries. So what that means is, if this raw material block of this food supply and this unrest and all the dynamics is currently happening in the Red Sea, if it's not being dealt with, it will impact on production dynamics across different markets easily. And once that's happening, then commodity prices will pick up in terms of shortages, rise in these prices, and that would impact on global supply of raw materials being made available for processed or semi-finished goods. So it sort of has an immediate impact and a ripple effect as well on global consumption. And once global consumption drops, or the price to consume increases, that's going to impact on global growth further down the line, and maybe even drive the world to recession more faster.
Well, now, bringing it back home to Nigeria, for a country like ours that is already grappling with so many challenges when it comes to inflation in food, in food commodities. Now, how would this, challenge now, this unrest, in the Red Sea, how would it impact our present state? Talking about food inflation, would food prices, further, increase, due to the cost of importation and all of that? What are Nigerians to expect in this time?
Well, first and foremost, to state that we already have a food security challenge locally. We aren't producing in the right quality and quantity that is required to meet our population. And aside that as well, our population have a very strong taste and preference for foreign goods. And that's also because, to a very large extent, the bulk of experiences people have consuming made in Nigeria haven't been pleasing. And added to that is the fact that you have a direct and indirect impact when you look at it from the context of the impact of the Red Sea unrest on the local economy. So we already have imported inflation as one of the major strong inputs to food inflation in Nigeria, right? Because most of what we used to produce, bread, sugar, and all that, are being imported. And the dynamics of those rising prices in recent times have been as a result of the geopolitical tensions, within the Russian-Ukraine war, climate change, Israel-Hamas, and all those things. Now, if you now look in context again to the Red Sea unrest, that would further deepen the nuances, either as direct raw material supply into the Nigerian economy, being short of expectation, and that would also impact on manufacturers having a difficult time to access those raw materials. And because those raw materials are now difficult to access, it becomes more pricey to access the ones that are readily available. Right? It's simple law of economics. When the demand for an item is high and the supply is reduced or short over a period of time, it means that the price of that item would rise. All right. So producers or manufacturers are going to have a difficult time accessing this raw material basket as a result of the Red Sea unrest, if it triples down to that. Secondly, if it doesn't happen from that direct value chain, it could happen indirectly. Again, because Nigeria is not a producer of quote unquote anything significant in the local, regional, and global space. It means that some of the things we need to get into final production, we need to import them as semi-finished goods. And importing goods as semi-finished goods means that many countries or different factories or different institutions in different countries that have already taken the impact of the unrest, all right, they've already factored the impact of that into their pricing, into their supply chain and all that, would also transfer those costs on the semi-finished items because they need to make profit, they need to be in business. And when you transfer that to the semi-finished items, and businesses in Nigeria get to also import those semi-finished items, it will sort of mean that we are already importing the inflation. So minus the fact that some stakeholders may have issues accessing the raw materials directly, other stakeholders are going to have more issues importing the semi-finished product that will help them finish the production line or the production process. So which technically means that either way, you're importing inflation. All right, and imported inflation on food is the scariest of the all inflation penetration blocks because it tells a very vivid picture as to why we're struggling and why we're not where we plan to be or we should be when it comes to food security in Nigeria. So which technically means that it will increase the price of food in the Nigerian market because the average manufacturer would also push the price further down the line. The consumer gets to bear the brunt of any increase globally, regionally, and even locally. And they would, of course, get to spend more share of their income, which they're already doing at the moment, to finance their day-to-day feeding and day-to-day shelter or day-to-day basic needs, which again would be very, very bad for the Nigerian economy, considering the way the economy is currently struggling now.
All right. Now, food inflation, affects everybody of course, everyone from different social economic classes, but some more than others, right? Now, what interventions can be put in place to, to basically, help those who are in their need? Because food is basic, so anyone who can feed at least once or twice a day, that is a very big problem. What can be done to intervene in this situation, especially here in Nigeria?
Well, I think that we need a case of both basic interventions as well as sector-based interventions. So basic interventions will be that rather than giving out palliatives and all of that, government may probably have to step in somewhere on the value chain to help producers secure produce, at a discounted rate, so that they can sort of manage the pricing impact as it's being transferred on the consumer. One end as well would be to think of how do we encourage local supply, because the local supply is not the issue. It's most times the bottlenecks to moving food from farm to market. So the price of yam in Benue is ridiculously cheap and is ridiculously available en masse to feed Nigerians. But the cost of moving a truckload of yams from a local government in Benue to Mount 12 market in Lagos is completely ridiculous. And when you factor that logistics or transport cost, realize that because the producer has to make money, he infuses those costs in the price per unit of that item. That's the price of yam. So if institutions or government can deal with roadblocks, particularly when it comes to infrastructure, mobility, logistics, storage. We'll be in a position where we can close the food security gap locally. That's one. And then two, help a lot of manufacturers have access to local raw materials to produce food. All right. And of course, supporting sector-based interventions when it comes to imported food, imported inflation, and all of those things. So it has to be a mix of supporting from the global end and from the regional or local end, to facilitate raw material supply and ease of access by Nigerians or for Nigerians, as the case may be.
Very well, very well. Now, we know that this unrest in the global space is going to affect the entire continent, Africa generally. But do you think this might be some kind of opportunity for Africans to have inter-African trades, instead of going out of Africa to source for some of our food products?
Well, yeah, top of mind it does, but the truth is we don't need to wait for such events to happen to begin to go self-reliant and to facilitate the intra or inter-African trade, as the case may be. And we already have everything it takes to facilitate that level of exchange within and among African countries. So take, for instance, you have the ASFTA. But if you go to meet the average producer and ask them, do you know about the ASFTA has benefited? 9 out of 10 will tell you no, they don't know about it. All right, so unrest or not, Red Sea unrest or not, geopolitical wars and all of that, tensions or not, Africa needs to step up its game when it comes to supporting its ecosystem, one another, and sort of like a be your brother's keeper kind of thing. There's of course there are going to be tensions, strict tensions even within Africa, but the goal is to align on the grounds of what's of the interest and to look beyond those tensions to facilitate production, exchange, and doing business even within local economy or local economies or across local economies in Africa. So yeah, this serves as an opportunity for us to look inward, but I'd rather say that we don't have to wait for these kind of events to literally unfold and evolve in front of our very faces before we can take or do the necessary things for us as Africans, knowing fully well the vast natural resource that we are blessed with and all that. So again, it's both a people problem and a leadership problem. To a large extent, even the leadership are part of the people. So to a large extent, it's a people problem, the lack of vision. I won't say corruption, because corruption is everywhere in the world. It's what you make of it that matters. So the days of clamoring corruption here and there is long gone. And those narratives are for small minds, quote unquote, because corruption itself is everywhere in the world. All right. So it's what you do with the corruption that makes sense, that for your people, that stands out. And outside the concept of corruption or not, Africa has what it takes to succeed and to come out really, really courageous out of the situation, and securing prosperity for its people. Yeah.
Now, are there alternative shipping routes or modes of transportation, that Nigerians and other African countries can explore to mitigate this crisis in the Red Sea?
I think it will likely be a question of, because it's a function of trade tensions, because it's a function of trade relations, foreign relations as well, because you can't even talk about that without having a sneak peek into how African countries are relating with other countries of the world as possible, because you first need to have that sorted before you can even talk about alternative trade routes. Because for that other country, for country B, them having to prioritize a trade route for you in terms of the relationship with them and all that also have pros and cons for them. So it's a complex web of foreign relations and trade relations, first of all, than looking for alternative trade routes. So until you have that level of something you have to offer that has to be like a win-win value exchange for countries across the world, then it's almost impossible to look back internally and say, with what has happened in the Red Sea, how can we mitigate this risk by exploring XYZ trade routes? And the concept of also exploring alternative trade routes, it also comes with its own risk. What other terms and conditions will those countries put to the table, bring to the table to allow you trade across their route. So it's a very complex web of, again, geopolitics, foreign relations, diplomacy, international relations, and what are regulations across trade, especially when it comes to working with certain countries in the world today. Knowing fully well that interests are at the center of many of the events that that are unfolding right now.
Right now, what practical steps would you say Africa has to adopt or look into, to bring about regional cooperation, amongst countries within the African continent?
Quite honestly, I don't think Africans or African governments are ready for regional cooperation, because the concept of regional cooperation rather, was what led to the ASFTA, the ECA, and all the ECOWAS, and all the many trade liberalization schemes, or trade agreement schemes over time. But it's not, they all failed woefully. All right, so it tells you that the problem is not the cooperation itself. The problem is the people. All right, we are not really, really good at working together. And that's the first problem. That's the first root cause problem. Once we can deal with that, everything else, when it comes to cooperation, will begin to evolve nicely. And cooperation itself in the globalized world can be very complex in terms of how it's been nuanced, or how it can be used as a tool to facilitate growth and development of African countries. Because within, again, cooperation, you have different countries who have the same ideologies, even within the same region. And so you have the stronger countries, you have the weaker countries, and all of that. So it's a very complex web that at the end of the day comes down to people, human beings, interests, and all of that. Once the economics of people and interest can be solved correctly, not from a black and white situation now, once interest can be aligned correctly, it's a lot easier to achieve cooperation. It's a lot easier to achieve collaboration. In fact, at the height of competition is collaboration. So, and all of these things are a function of individuals and people. So I don't see that happening anytime soon, except African leaders are truly and genuinely ready to cooperate. And also take into consideration that they're going to be external influences that would intentionally penetrate or test the cooperation. So what buffers are in place to also ensure that our cooperation will be sustainable or strong enough to yield sustainable results? That's the conversation for another day.
Now, is there anything that can be done, in Nigeria here, talking about Nigeria, to protect our economy from always being affected by global issues? For every challenge in the global space, it has a very, serious effect on the Nigerian economy. How can we protect ourselves, protect the Nigerian economy against such issues?
The Nigerian economy is first exposed because we have weak institutions, weak structures. And when I talk about structures, I'm talking about fiscal structures, monetary structures, sectorial structures, regulatory structures, legal structures, law enforcement structures, different things that come together to make a country strong. Weak currency as well, weak currency and all that. So you want to think of both the structure deficits, the institutional deficits as well. Now, those two things are very critical for us to lead reforms on, even the civil service as well, until we can begin to fix our structural, institutional deficits. We may not be able to position ourselves in a place where we can stand these global shocks. Because many of our challenges in the first place, and why we're exposed to those shocks, is because we've not fixed the structures that will help us stand firm. So think about a house. If the foundation of that house is not strong, it will collapse. So that's what's happening in their context. Anything that happens, any wind that blows, or any event that happens globally, the economy is worsening up for it because our foundation is not strong. Now, when I say foundation, I don't mean we should go back to the foundation. I mean we need to fix the structures, the institutional element. And these things are not actually difficult. They are not difficult. It just takes willingness of people and the political class to get it done. All right. And that willingness is not there. All right. That willingness is not there. And the willingness has to translate in form of sustainable reforms. And so until we can fix these things in a very sustainable way, I don't see us being able to hold or curtail the impact of this global event on our local economy.
We've been able to discover that the Houthi attack, is persistent despite Western strikes, to try to curb the situation. But what can the regional and international, diplomacy individuals or organizations play in this issue? How can this conflict be curbed to the barest minimum so we don't keep, suffering the issues that come up from it?
Well, there's no simple answer or simple solution to this. But one baseline is you have the unrest because interests are not being met, and then you have frictions around those interests. So how do you meet the interest or satisfy the interest and the needs of all the parties on the table? Once that question can be answered, then the weight of this unrest would drop. Same thing with Russia-Ukraine war, Israel-Hamas war, all that. The reason why you have tensions is because there are frictions somewhere along the line when it comes to interest. And until these interests are being dealt with, not really dealt with, until they're being aligned and all that, there's no way forward. So that's what I would think should be the first point of call for diplomats, foreign relations, execs, and all that. And interest itself is a very complex ordeal in the time we live in.
All right. Now, how can African countries develop robust risk management framework to mitigate the impact of similar disruptions in the future? How do we prevent this, this kind of issues in the future?
Well, I will come to, first and foremost, leadership, the people and the leadership. It's a popular saying, but there are still exceptions to it, that everything rises and falls on leadership. So you want to think of people, the African people and African leaders. You need a level of coordination and strength of leadership to even be able to think of this risk at a regional level. So what's happening right now is for those who even have the wherewithal, in terms of resource and capabilities, they are thinking about the risk for themselves only. So Africa needs a level of cooperation, which again is hinged on being able to work together as a people. All right. Africa needs a level of cooperation to be able to even work towards foreseeable risk. All right. So until we can get to that point, which we don't look like it, like we are doing at the moment, until we can get to that point, I don't think we'll be able to mitigate the impact of these things on our local economy. And let's not forget that there is strong divergence among African countries. Some African countries are prosperous, some are emerging, some are very weak, some are fairly weak. And the ones who are strong comparatively. So again, there's a need for us to come together to align the different areas of strength. And then from that alignment, we can begin to work cohesively towards identifying what the risks are to us as a continent than as independent nations.
What kind of early warning systems can be established in Africa, Nigeria specifically, to basically track the potential food security threats, to actually enable some form of proactive responses?
I think the signs are already there. Because you'll talk about early warning systems when you have a structure already in place. So if you don't have a structure in place, if your system is very loose-guarded, then the loose-guardedness or the leakage dynamics of that system is enough, for anything to jump on it. All right. So you need to organize the system first. When the system is organized, then you can now put in early warning signs. I don't know if you get what I mean. So right now, things have really crumbled so bad. I mean, the naira has fallen, Nigerians are poorer, things are difficult. Those are already signs. So until we can deal with the elements, first of all, and have a well-structured working economy, then you cannot put in early warning signs. Because the early warning signs are to help you project necessary risk. However, even with the way things are right now, there are too many signs globally to show us that we need to get our acts together. And the current state of the global economy already shows us that we're in the era of worsening geopolitical tensions, which is going to continue for a while. So that's to tell you that there are still more events that will unfold. So the signs are already there right now. So until we are being able to get our acts together locally, we may not be able to be in a position, because even if right now we are seeing more signs or quote unquote early warning signs, how can we now position to respond? There is no way we can respond, because you can't respond when you don't have your act together. It's like in the military. You can't respond to a threat when you don't have your act together. I don't know if you get what I mean, because in the first place, the threat would have come at you, being the fact that you are so loose-guarded, unstructured, and not ready. So there's different ways the threat can come at you because you are not ready to respond. So the thing about response is first in the readiness. And here, readiness is likely a function of how structurally firm the frameworks, the institutions, the people, the quality of governance do you have locally. If you don't have any of that, it will be hard to respond. So even if you see the signs or the early warning signs or even late warning signs, as the case may be, you cannot respond and you cannot raise your response level. So it's
Very well.
not to be so negative,
now
but Nigeria is really in a very bad place and we need to fix it.
Private and public investments be targeted, towards this aspect of food security in Nigeria currently? How can that be done?
Well, you can't target investment if the landscape is uncertain. So investment only flows where there's security. Otherwise, if you put investment here now, the current situation of things will drain those investments. For instance, if you invest in trucks that can help move yams, bulk yams to Lagos, for instance, private sector funded trucks, let's assume. Number one, the roads are bad. Number two, the road networks are poor. Number three, you still have to do with the length of a truck moving from Benue to Lagos in terms of the number of days or the number of hours it's going to require. You still have to deal with the fact that there are no alternative transportation routes. So at best, the investment can come in putting together the structure to facilitate ease of access to market. All right. Then you now need another layer of investment for functionality purpose. How do you move products faster? How do you do that and all that? But you first need to set the structure for those things. So some investments can come at that level, but primarily investors are not open to investing when the landscape is uncertain or when the risks are too high, because the higher the risk, the lower the reward. Not in that sense, but you understand what I'm trying to say. All right, because you can't secure the returns when it's so uncertain. You also want to think about the insecurity itself in Nigeria, the case of kidnapping, banditry, and all of these things. And those things are threatening the mobility of goods, people, services, and all that across the value chain. So until you can deal with those things, you cannot situate investments to be very productive and to yield functionally for the Nigerian people. And that's what Nigerians need right now.
Nigerians need right now. We'll go on a quick break. When we return, this conversation continues. Stay with us.
Broad Street. Broad Street, situated in Lagos Island, is steeped in Nigerian history. Once the biggest financial hub of the country, it housed the headquarters of major banks, linked to CBN, the stock exchange, and the loads of lender companies. Broad Street is a historically significant street. It has played a central role in the development of Lagos and history, an important commercial and administrative center for the British colonial authorities. It was also a home to some of the city's earliest modern buildings. Broad Street was a residential area in the pre-colonial era. With the British came the Methodist Boys High School in 1878 and the Broad Street Prison in 1882, renamed Freedom Park. The General Hospital, which was a British military hospital, was built in 1893, being the first general hospital in Nigeria. The old British Secretariat building, which is now the Federal Ministry of Justice, was built in 1906. Broad Street has seen a full turn into modern commercial office blocks, complexes, skyscrapers, and markets from the Outer Marina through Akpombo, early into the Adeniji-Adele Road. Broad Street is one of the busiest streets in Nigeria on weekdays, where commercial activities take place day and night. From modern buildings to ancient structures, this street gives one a raw dose of life in Lagos. Broad Street is often referred to as Lagos Financial District. It boasts a mix of architectural styles, reflecting its long history, colonial-era buildings, Victorian and Edwardian architectural features, alongside more modern skyscrapers and structures. Broad Street remains a vital, vibrant part of the Nigerian economy. Broad Street. Souk enlightenment.
Many thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Market Insight. And we still have our guest, Gospel Obele, and he's an economist. He's still with us discussing this issue of the Red Sea unrest as we have it today. And we have been having this conversation for a while. Now, to you, Gospel, before we went on that break, you mentioned the fact that security, or the lack of it, is the factor militating against the availability and affordability of food in Nigeria as we have it today. But now that, of course, because of this unrest and so many other challenges in the global space and even in the nation, food has become a very the food inflation rate has skyrocketed, so we have more people going hungry. And now, wouldn't that further, speak against the security of the nation? Isn't that like a ripple, more like a roller coaster ride of events, in that the lack of food would even make more people, go into illicit activities just to get by, and thereby creating more insecurity in the nation? What's your thought on that?
Well, in terms of the way forward, I think it has to do more with again organizing the markets properly and fixing these bottlenecks, and also dealing with those externalities like insecurity and all that have ripple effect on food security in Nigeria. Also, there is a gross shortage of talent in the food sector, in the agricultural sector. And what also means is that you don't have so much young people who are playing there. All right. And many people are playing there for subsistence reasons. So how do you make the sector more attractive to young people? How do you make the sector more commercial and subsistence driven? And how do you plug in what the sector is currently doing to the industrialization plan of the government? Because until those two go hand in hand, we may not be able to solve the food security challenge. Right now, 90% of engagement in the agricultural sector is purely crop production, and that's not going to take us anywhere. But again, you also have industries contributing 18% to the Nigerian GDP. So we need to be able to unlock industrial dynamics and ensure there's a connection between agricultural-based engagements or activities with industrialization. So that way, we can take raw materials and produce or process them into semi-finished items or finished items. And when you begin to do all that, it becomes more commercialized at scale. And then lots of young people can now begin to get involved because they can see a sustainable path to wealth through agriculture. as it stands now, there is actually sustainable path to wealth agriculture. But if you're going in, you have to probably create the structures around it to facilitate that, transition. You have to build your factory, you have to do all those things, but government can build a one-stop factory that collates, crop production of raw materials that are being produced and transform them into finished goods. And again, creating the access to market solutions are required. So when you produce the chocolates in Nigeria, how do you get those chocolates to the UK, to Zurich, to New York, and get it sold there at scale as well? All right, such a way that you can earn foreign exchange and made in Nigeria can actually blossom, not just in Nigeria, but outside Nigeria as well. So once we can begin to create those ecosystem of value, we may not necessarily be able to deal with the food security challenge in Nigeria, especially as it ties to bringing down inflation, strengthening the value of the foreign exchange, and increasing FX receipts in the Nigerian economy.
All right, and now Nigeria is blessed with land, yes? And many a time we just see bushes and bushes and bushes everywhere. What can the government do to encourage more people to get into farming, agriculture, and be sure that they won't one day be displaced from those areas, for some kind of, because the whole nation is becoming very urban, so even the lands available, are being used for other purposes, industries and establishment, housing and all of that. Now, what can the government do to, ensure that there is more land for agriculture?
Well, we already have a lot of land for agriculture. 60% of the land in Nigeria is arable. If you go to Niger, Plateau, Sokoto, Gombe, Kaduna, Benin, you're going to see a lot of lands there. And there are not so much urban developments there compared to Lagos. So the argument's on two fronts. How do you not just make the land available, because I think it's already available. How do you make it attractive to young people? One. Two, and how do you scale from there? Because those lands are in Kaduna, those lands are in Benin. I don't think the average young person wants to go and live in places where they can't really gain much value from, or where they are cut off from productive living, in quote. So it's not a function of fixing the structural elements. If you build a fast train between Niger and Lagos, where people can get to Lagos in 30 minutes, you're going to see lots of development in those areas as well. There also has to be like a land conservation policy. Even within Lagos, there has to be land conservation. That means you're constraining or restraining people from building in certain places because you need to encourage production in those places. We also need more factories and all that. So all of these things are tied to a robust agricultural development and industrialization plan for the local economy. And it also has to entail the necessary skill sets, teaching, education, talent development, reward system as well for people who are working in agricultural-based sectors and all of that. So there has to be a robust ecosystem of value exchange that must be very commercial in its outlook. Otherwise, you're not going to get young people or people attracted to agriculture. So, which is why a former minister tagged it as agriculture as a business. So people have always thought of agriculture as a means of food supply, or food production, or just food security, or putting food on the table. But it's actually, the fact that Nigeria needs to take on that vision and run with it as, agriculture becoming a business, or agriculture as a business, and then build all the trade, infrastructure, talent, education, access to market solution from that ideology.
Now, could you just give us your final thought on this issue? Probably there was something you have been, itching to say concerning this this topic, and I would like to hear it now.
Which of the topics, please?
Okay. I was just going to get your final thoughts on the topic, before we round off this segment of the show.
Yeah, a lot of things in Nigeria is hinged to achieving food security. A lot of things. I mean, our FX is tied to it, our exchange is tied to it, the cost of living crisis is tied to it, the inflation, bringing down inflation sustainably. Nigeria cannot bring down inflation with the current food security challenge in Nigeria. It's impossible because the inflation we're dealing with is out of control based off on global events. Global events meeting a very volatile and weak local economy. So it's a recipe for disaster. It's not coming down anytime soon. So a lot of things are tied to we getting our food security game right. And food security is also hinged on different strands, like I mentioned earlier on. Unlocking productivity in the agricultural sector itself, thinking of agriculture as a business, industrializing, and linking efforts between the agricultural sector and the industry sector. So I don't think it should be a separate Ministry of Agriculture and a separate Trade and Investment ministry. There has to be, something that ties both firmly together, because that's the deal breaker for Nigeria. That's the genius for the Nigerian economy right now. Knowing fully well we have 68% arable land, knowing fully well we're a very flourishing local economy. So, yeah, those are my final thoughts. We need to, go hard on these reforms and scale them in the right ideology.
Very well, thank you so very much, Gospel, for joining us on Market Insight this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, that has been Gospel Obele. He is an economist, and he has, of course, dissected this this topic. And I'm sure that even you watching at home, you have gotten some insight into what the Nigerian economy is facing currently, with regards to the unrest in the Red Sea. We'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we'll give you the currency market information. Stay with us, please.
My name is Olatunji Shoti Miri. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Souk News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Souk News. If you're not watching Souk News, I pity you. But keep watching Souk News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timida Kolo and you're watching Souk News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Souk News. Guys, keep watching Souk News. For everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news, Souk News is your station.
Welcome back. You're still watching Market Insight, and right now we're going straight into the currency market, and the exchange rate in the official market for the 24th of January 2024 as released by the CBN is as follows. The USD is buying, was buying, that was as at yesterday, was buying at the rate of 886 Naira and selling for 887 Naira. The pounds was buying at 1,132 Naira and selling for 1,133 Naira. The euros was buying at 968 Naira and selling for 969 Naira. All of that is in the official market, and we can see that there has been a decrease from what it was in the previous day. The previous day dollar was about 899, and we can see that the dollar and pounds, they all keep decreasing, bit by bit as the days go by. But in the parallel market, the reverse is the case, because the USD is selling as of today for 1,375 Naira and selling at 1,385 Naira, while the pounds is buying at 1,725 Naira and selling at 1,740 Naira. The euros, on the other hand, is buying at 1,455 Naira and selling at 1,470 Naira. Now we can see that compared to yesterday's report from the parallel markets, we see that there has been an increase in the rate. So of course that is to be expected, but the difference in the rate of the parallel market compared to that of the official market is quite exorbitant. We have for the dollar we have about 489 Naira difference, and that is a lot if you ask me. But that is the report for the currency markets today. And on that note, we draw the curtain on Market Insights today. Many thanks to you for staying with us from the beginning of the show till the very end. I'm Adesua Iramosele. Market Insight makes a return tomorrow, same time, same station. Stay with us.